All right, let's see what we can figure out. So, I hope everybody had a peaceful and restful Thanksgiving. I know here at our home it was a quiet, wonderful non event. And after not overdoing it for the first time in years, it was definitely a restful night. So, with that, let's jump right in. I think I've organized my thoughts and things that I can remember. Again, if I do come up with, oh, yeah, I will make a point of jotting those down and capture those another time. So, today we're going to talk about the clock is ticking. So, let's take a look. The big question people are asking is, when do we get our country back? There are certain aspects of our elections we have to take into account, as well as understanding where we are today as a country. When we throw in the aspects of what NESARA is attempting to do, we should also heavily balance that on that side. So all of the negative necessaries that have to occur will have to occur under our current foul administration. There's no way the uneducated masses would allow it any other way without riots and violence. So this administration is going to be here a while longer while all the ugliness has to happen. NESARA has a few tenets right away we should tee up that are part of this time clock of when do we get our country back. So the points that we want to look at guaranteed, we have to have constitutional law. We also have to have a cleaned out Congress, as well as all the corrupt political offices throughout the United States. We also need to make sure those elections are free and honest, preventing any manipulation by any group, which we're seeing exposed in the news these days. That's a refreshing twist on what we've seen. And then finally, getting constitutional law back in our courts in legal matters. So these 4 points have to happen before we actually get our country back. So keep that in mind. It can't just happen. So that's important to note. So we have to agree on the fact that we had corruption, theft, and dishonesty in our last couple cycles. We need to take back the House. What has 45 said on the more recent rallies? We have to take it back in 2022. He also has said we have to do things right now in 2021. So there's things that are happening that are in the open, like the elections we just saw in November that were subverted. We'll talk about that later, as well as what's coming up to clean house in both Congress and Senate in 2022. And the important thing is the elections have to be monitored and validated. We're finding out anytime there's an opportunity that corruption takes place. So those are things we have to agree on. Meanwhile, there are going to be certain things that people are not going to like. So I'm sorry. There used to be an album I used to play the music, and it's Don't Shoot the Piano Player. I'm going to deliver the message, but I'm just here to entertain. So don't, and educate, hopefully. So don't shoot the piano player. So we're seeing a stockpile of goods in hundreds of tankers offshore our ports. This is by design. It's not because we don't have workers, truckers, or the ability to deliver it all. It's because by driving shortages, they can squeeze the citizen into compliance. Having spent some time in third world countries and not being able to get certain goods, it makes it uncomfortable at best and dangerous at worst. Things we can count on from offshore these days include the very medicines that they've hooked us on with the medical insurance and pharma cartel. By now driving the prices of these hard-to-find items up, they're squeezing the very last dollars out of our pockets so that when things are finally restored in their world, we'll accept whatever that is as long as we get our goods. So keep in mind the shortages are by design. It's going to get worse. I was at the grocer this last week preparing for Thanksgiving. Happened to notice in beef, which I like a nice roast, but I noted a roast that would normally be about 20 some odd dollars was close to 90. And they got the benefit of the "I did that" sticker from Joe Biden. But the reality is that is more of what you're going to see in the near term. So keep that in mind. Stock up on what you can now, and there will be more and more shortages. I'm fortunate that I've been able to prepare. I encourage you to do the same. We're headed for a financial crash. That has to happen. So there's a couple facets to this that the New World Order is planning on with their global reset, but it's also something that we need to do if we're going to do what we need to do for our country. So they're going to cause this crash. And we're seeing indicators in the stock market, just like 2008 and the other crashes. All of these precursors to an imminent crash are now triggering, and we're seeing these alerts. I, for one, am out of any position in the market that I'm not willing to lose it all on. So keep that in mind. As long as the market has dark pools, closed door trading, and other manipulations, you should always refer to the stock market as the casino. Keep in mind, the house always wins. So unless you're willing to get away with your small winnings, you are definitely going to lose it. So keep that in mind. The other caveat, I'm not a financial advisor. This is just the voice of experience speaking. I work within the financial system. I can see quite possibly that our reset will be sidetracked and a different type of reset will occur for the United States. Again, when that happens is contingent on many events, but we already have established and reacquired our foundational currency, which is gold. And we got that back during the last several years. When we finally are able to plug in our core currency, things will dramatically change. Now, keep in mind, we went completely off the gold standard under Nixon. The best word of advice here right now is buy gold and silver, prepare while it's on sale. If the U.S. debt clock is accurate, minor investments in these metals will land you a windfall and you'll do quite well. For example, 100 ounces of silver at today's price is about $2,600. But once the reestablishment of that currency standard is in place, it's more likely to fetch about over $300,000. That's a monstrous thousand-fold return. So keep that in mind. And that's because silver prices are being manipulated, and we know this for a fact. We've seen J.P. Morgan fined for it numerous times over the last decade. Similarly with gold, this is our currency's foundation. An ounce today is about $1,800, so a purchase of just 1 ounce can move you quickly to over $21,000 an ounce when things are reestablished and revalued. The return on silver is far higher. The thing to keep in mind is silver has always been used for day-to-day transactions throughout history, hence the higher demand. Gold is how you store your wealth. So if you want to prepare for the economy of the foreseeable future, investing in these metals as they have for millennia might be prudent. Again, I am not a financial advisor. Do your own research. Remember, they can only manipulate prices for so long. J.P. Morgan, again, has been caught. They've been fined, but they keep doing it. So until we take them down and remove them, they're going to keep doing it. But that gravy train is going to come to an end shortly. I've linked APMEX and JM Bullion here. I have no interest in either of these firms, nor do I receive anything for a referral or sale. So please do take advantage if you're so inclined to do so. Once that crash occurs, the new currencies will indeed roll out. So the New World Order, and I'll refer to them as NWO for short from here on out, with the rollout, they will revalue currency globally. Keep in mind, the rising prices you see today are a direct result of the Fed injecting 25% of our currency in use today into the system over the last 18 months. So the more paper that's out there, the higher the prices go, as long as there's nothing to tie it for a plumb line. Those that are investing in currencies are counting on the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, the Malaysian rupiah, and the Vietnam dong. All of these have been subjugated and manipulated, so there will be a huge opportunity to collect a profit on those investments. We don't know yet if it's going to be a 1-to-1 or a many-to-1, but I can tell you right now, you can literally buy $1 million in Iraqi dinar for a couple $100. So whatever it takes, and again, it's a crapshoot. Depends on the governments, depends on the NWO, but when that revaluation comes, it's definitely going to be worth a lot more than what they originally had it established at. Once that reset has happened, currency and prices can optimally return to norms that we knew back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even the 20s. A great comparison of this is my parents bought a house in 1964 for 30 grand. And when my mom finally sold it around Y2K, 36 years later, she received 15 times that amount for the house. And honestly, I think she could have got more. Did the value change that much? No. It's the devaluation of currency over those years that made it the price at that amount. So again, it's manipulation of currency that we've had here under the Federal Reserve in America. So think recalibration of pricing of incomes. If you made a simple $10 an hour, which is 20 grand a year, and prices returned to pre-1960s, you could easily buy a house and sustain your family. The recalibration and reevaluation of our currency against gold and silver can indeed bring this about. Well, do your own research and then learn what an income could actually buy in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Why is it we had single income households and dual income households were relatively unheard of until the 60s? We can also look at in the 60s, what did we bring about? Credit cards. So lo and behold, in order to keep caught up on those interest payments, we had to have another income. So again, that's all part of this recalibration and reset. FDR outlawed owning gold in 1933. You have to ask, why did he do that? Making people cash in their store of wealth for a dollar that could be manipulated by the Federal Reserve is what they did. At that point, they had you lock, stock, and barrel. Your wealth was what they determined it to be if it was priced in dollars. They could literally manipulate the dollar, and they have, and they continue to do so now. Dollars continually lose their value every day. So gold, on the other hand, doesn't lose its value. Neither does silver. So those are things that people should be investing in my opinion, that will indeed maintain and secure your wealth. So once the crash occurs, we also have to have unfettered and free elections. Many of us were panicked thinking we were going to see justice last year prior to the inauguration day, but this is all part of the rollout. Keep in mind, they have to recommit the crimes all over again because we don't know who 44 pardoned prior to leaving office in 2016. I'm sure there's a record somewhere, but who knows? As such, they knew they were too greedy and would do it again, so they set the monitoring traps, the auditing traps, and more. Even now, with smaller elections just this month, they sprung the trap on more corruption in states as obvious as New Jersey and California. They will never learn, so keep that in mind. Once all of that happens, we need to have a house cleaning. Literally, in the House and Senate. And that won't happen until the 2022 midterms. People are waking up now, and as they get fed up, they will ultimately trigger the red tsunami, nothing like the 2020 elections. As a result, it will be insurmountable and undefeatable. We have to get things in place so that happens. So the election mechanism has to be corrected. We already brought in blockchain to prevent this next time, but we did not have it in the last couple of elections that were subverted. With that in place, there will be evidence immediately of tampering as well as obvious ramifications on that exposure. By reseating Congress under just elections, we won't have to go through ridiculous hoops to restore the balance of power. Right now, they're trying desperately to do certain things. Trust me, it's not going to happen until next November. I predict once we have that election, there will be a massive fight. Think of it as a dying gasp from the corrupt Congress fighting their loss of power. Once the new members are sworn in the top of January 2023, we'll promptly see the overturn of the certification, the move for military guidance, and takeover. So when that finally occurs, you'll see a secure, open transition to a military correction for our country and our government. Ultimately, what the military has to do, constitutionally, the military is set for this event. From what we can ascertain, they came up with a plan quite a while ago, knowing how things were being corrupted, and as a result, they have contingency plans for various sidetracks. The Constitution has plans for this, as does the 2016 revision of the Law of War. If you haven't read it, download it. It's free for the download, and I will link it here. For anyone to say trust the plan, you need to realize the plan is fluid. It's not locked in one solid plan. It's not what some portray as a sure thing. Instead, it's an unstoppable force. Hence the term, nothing can stop what is coming, and where we go one, we go all. As such, with the contingencies planned for, the military can indeed intervene when that evidence becomes insurmountable and Congress hands over the reins. At that time, they will take over key functions of our government in federal, state, and local jurisdictions. Remember, the Constitution and the amendment states plainly that the Fed cannot intervene in states' business, but if fraud is involved in a state's participation in federal business, it becomes a different matter. At that time, stopping the train and purging the line is most called for, and we will indeed see that soon. Dates are impossible to predict, but as we move along the other timelines, it'll become very apparent. I'd encourage anyone to search, mine, and analyze what we've already shared, keeping in mind until we have full transparency, we really don't know if it's information or disinformation. So be careful who and what you follow. You can get to the source at CAG.news. Also, go and search Magic Eyes Only is spelled with a Q, QNLY, on YouTube and or BitChute or Rumble. He has done a phenomenal job tying things together better than anybody has. And I refer to his videos as my gospel source for everything that has to deal with Q. So, when does 45 return? All of the events above have to take place under a faux administration, under the hands of adults in the room to prevent the leftist children from destroying our world and its economy and further enslaving it in the evil socialist and communist systems. Mike Pompeo told us on Inauguration Day when we would get our POTUS back. His tweet was ignored by various providers and broadcasters, even after being tweeted, messaged, and mentioned directly to them in our own communications. Pompeo specifically said on January 21st, it would be 1,384 days. Let that sink in. I did the math out on date and time, and date and time shows that if you add 1,384 days, it is November 5th, 2024. So give that a thought. This points us to an open election cycle. And it also is one of those years where we want to be prepared. I know this isn't what people want to hear, but it's the reality of what's above. I'm not here to win any fan clubs. I don't need a bunch of people chasing and following me. I don't need that kind of notoriety. But you need to do what's necessary to weather the remainder of this time and push for justice and everything. We've become a dumb and lazy country. We want everything back. We want it now. That's how this happened. Let's fix it. Time is short, and if we're to succeed, we need to be on the offense. Better that it takes a bit of time and effort than nothing at all and we lose our country. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other points, so as I remember them, I'll jot them down for another time. Shalom.